So, this is a clash between two giants of the chess world. With white we have Arjun Erigaisi, and with black we have Vincent Keymer, both in the top 10, maybe even top 5 in the world. And this was a game between them that was played quite recently at the Club World Championship in, I want to say, Greece somewhere. And in this game, what we can learn is that even if a piece is trapped, it will take quite a while to take it, and while our opponent takes our trapped piece, we can launch an attack that will be quite devastating. So Arjun started with d4, knight f6, c4, e6, knight f3, and b6. So this is the Queen's Indian defense. This is what Vincent has been playing for a while now, and this is an interesting way to play for a win with black, as this keeps a lot of tension on the board, and there's not that much fury compared to other lines. Black is just trying to fianchetto the bishop and control the square on e4. a3 by Arjun, so this is his preparation. The main move here is g3 to combat the bishop on b7, but a3 is called a Petrosian system because of Tigran Petrosian, who used to play this a lot in his day. And the point is to stop bishop b4. For example, after bishop b7, we play knight c3, and now black is unable to pin our knight to further control the square on e4. And usually what black does here is d5, white usually exchanges, and we have some structure like this, or knight d5, and after queen c2, usually something like this happens. Let's say black finishes development, we can play bishop f4, e3, and black will eventually try to play c5 to trade off his backwards pawn, and usually black will have some kind of small edge on the queen side, while white will try to get the center. So here instead, black played knight e4, which is the way to try to kind of play for a win here with black, not fixing the structure in the center, just trying to exchange knights because black has a little bit less space, so piece exchanges are good for him, and he is also allowing the pawn to potentially go to f5. So now the threat is to take and double the pawns. So white takes bishop e4, and here the main move would be knight d2. After bishop b7, e4, white takes the whole center, but he has slight coordination issues, and for example after d6 or g6, black develops his pieces and tries to attack with f5 or c5 or even d5 or e5. So such positions give a lot of room for exploration, so this is what Vincent was aiming for. e3 is another way to play. You can simply play bishop d3 and castle. But instead knight g5 is played, which is actually a novelty, which was played by Arjun for the first time in history. This move is on the board. And here Keymer's preparation was over, and he did not know where to put this bishop. The natural move would be bishop b7, but I would assume white was planning this move d5, quite typically shedding in the bishop. For example, bishop e7, knight f3, or even h4. And the position is quite dangerous for black as he has trouble finishing development. White is trying to play e4, maybe bishop d3, and take a lot of space. So perhaps Vincent did not like this, so he chose the other diagonal, bishop g6. But now that this diagonal is vacant, Arjun will try to take it with his own bishop and say that this bishop is perhaps a little bit misplaced, and it can even be attacked, for example like this, or with h4 and h5. So here h6 was played. Instead of moving the knight, white plays bishop g2, attacking the rook on a8, and this made Vincent think for quite a while, and he decided to take the knight, which was a mistake, because this of course loses the exchange, but Vincent was banking on the fact that the bishop would be trapped, and if black is in time to pick up the bishop somehow, he will have two pieces for the rook, which would be a huge material advantage. In hindsight, this is a mistake. Vincent should have played the move c6 to prepare d5. For example, now the knight is actually attacked. It's knight h3, d5. And now, after, for example, knight f4, bishop h7, castles, white seems to have somewhat of an advantage in space. He has a quite good Catalan position. This b6 move has weakened the queen side for black, so he can try to attack with rook c1. And in general, this position is quite dry, as the structure is defined. So perhaps Vincent did not want this because he wanted to beat Arjun Erigaisi. So he played taking on g5. Arjun, of course, takes the rook, and c6. This has to be played, otherwise the bishop will escape, and the material would simply be in white's favor. So c6. So now black's plan is to pick up the bishop on a8, so which means white should be in a hurry. He cannot really save his bishop, so he has to do something in the meantime. And this is what Arjun had in mind. So first he castles, and this gets the king out of the center and also develops the rook, because otherwise the rook is just passively sitting and defending the pawn on h2. Keep in mind, black is in no position to attack on the h-file, so we don't really care about this rook. Bishop e7 was played, but after quite a while. But probably black should have already tried to pick up the bishop. For example, queen c7. White would try to play d5, most likely, a5. And here, for example, the d-file can be opened, but black is threatening to pick up the bishop. And what white can do is he can develop while taking pawns. f6, for example, bishop e3. Black will eventually take this bishop, but at the end of all this, it seems very dangerous for black, as now white has a rook and 2 pawns for the bishop and knight. Black also has problems with development. Dynamically, black should be more or less okay. White should be slightly better, but not much more. But I would understand why Vincent was scared of this position, as he has a lot of problems with development, and his king is in the center, while white has quite easy development, and his rooks have an easy file on the d-file. So instead, bishop e7 to defend the pawn on g5 before going here, and also to have some development. Here d5 anyway, queen c7, so this prepares a5, queen e7, and also stops the move d6. Here bishop e3 is played, and now Vincent makes a big mistake. He should have castled with the point to get the king out of the center before going for these advances. And for example, if white does something like taking here, black can recapture, and now even knight d7 is a threat. And here, for example, white would not be in time to do anything. For example, queen e4. If knight d7, then this pawn will be taken. But after rook c8, knight d7 is next, and white is out of firepower. His bishop will be lost, and black will have a material advantage. So here, for example, queen a4 should be played to attack this. But after f5, f4, this is one way to play for black. He does have some counterplay, and even though he is down material, the bishop on a8 is stuck, and white has a hard time attacking it. So instead, black plays a6, which is natural to play queen a7 and pick up the loose bishop, but this is a blunder, and Arjun uses it to his advantage very nicely. So I would suggest that you pause the video and try to find the best move. So we can take a look at what Arjun played. And here he played the move queen d4, which is the only winning move here, using the newly weakened b6 square and also attacking the square on g7, which is undefended because black used the tempo to move the bishop to defend g5. And it turns out that even though black will pick up this bishop, white will do quite a lot of damage. In the meantime, the position will open up, and also when black picks up this bishop, his queen will be on a8, which will not be able to participate in the battle in the center and the king side. So now the big threat is actually queen takes b6, as then the queens will be exchanged, which means black will not have a way to take this bishop, as only the queen can take. So black goes for queen a7, as there's not much else to do, and white takes the pawn on g7. Now if here, black would take the bishop, and he would be doing very well. But after queen g7, now the rook is attacked, we have to move, and now white plays bishop takes c6. So he gives up the bishop voluntarily for a pawn, but it's not really because white is getting a pawn, but it's because he is opening up the position on the d-file. There were other ways to play as well. The computer's favorite is very painful. After rook fd1, queen takes a8, d6, taking the bishop, there's only one square, and now c5. And if we look at this position, it looks horrible for black because all of his pieces can't move. The queen is imprisoned on a8. The knight cannot move at all. For example, after this, rook a to c1. White will take here, he will take here, and maybe he will just push his pawn, while black scrambles to finish development. So even though black has a material advantage with 2 pieces and a pawn against the rook, it will not be enough. So bishop takes c6, and white opens up the position and takes on e6, because now the pawn on d7 isn't defending e6, black cannot take back, so white now has a rook and 3 pawns for 2 pieces, which is actually quite a big material advantage at this point. Not even talking about material, black is really having a lot of trouble with development. So queen b7, and now white's idea is simple, rook fd1, taking the d-file, and c5, trying to open something up for his knight, but now white uses the new square with rook d5, threatening to simply take another pawn, bishop e4, now white takes with check, gives another check, rook f7, and now rook e5, the rook has been activated, knight d7, and now the rook is kind of trapped. White could go to e6, but all of this is quite slow, so Arjun does not waste time. Instead of thinking about how to save his rook, he simply takes on e7, and he does this without thinking too much. After king e7, now white has only 3 pawns for the knight. Now he has 4 pawns, which is of course enough. King e8. And now you can again pause the video and figure out what Arjun Erigaisi played in this position to continue his crashing attack. Well, let's take a look. Rook d1. And this doesn't require much calculation, as here white had some forcing moves, a check here, but it doesn't lead anywhere. And when our attack doesn't win by force, we must involve more pieces in the game. And this rook on a1 was completely useless, and now it's on the only open file. And there are a lot of ideas like this, or simply taking the knight at some point, or even getting checkmate on d8 at some positions as well. So even though black has a lot of pieces, he can't really do anything with them. For bishop h1 is a funny move threatening checkmate, but after f3 the bishop is lost, echoes of white's sacrifice on a8. So bishop h7 is played, trying to block the check, but now a very nice move, queen h6. This has a threat of playing queen e6. After king f8, bishop h6 will lead to checkmate. So bishop f5 is played. Now rook d5 involving the rook. The threat is to take here, and after taking back, queen e6 would win a piece. So rook h7, but now white has only one winning move, but it is good enough. White has to move the queen to d6, and it's quite easy since there are no more squares. Queen d6, bishop h3. This creates a pin on the rook on d5, because now if it moves, then queen g2 would be checkmate. But of course, Arjun will not blunder this. He gives a check here, rook f7, queen g8, rook f8, and the last move of the game is queen g7. And this is completely winning. Black resigns, Keymer hands in the towel, and here the threat is queen to e7 mate. Black cannot move the knight as well because the queen is attacked, not to mention checkmate. And after rook f7, for example, white had probably planned this great queen sacrifice, queen e5. And this one cannot be taken because of this nice checkmate. If it was black to move, he could also checkmate, but of course the rules would not allow us. Otherwise, bishop e6 has to be played, but this will of course lead to checkmate. And also king h8, queen h8 is also checkmate. So a very nice game played by Arjun Erigaisi, a crushing win against one of the best players in the world. And it goes to show that material is not that important if our pieces are not playing. For example, here, Keymer sacrificed his exchange because he was expecting to take this bishop. When it turns out that he can even take the bishop, it seems that it was too late because white had opened the position and crushed his opponent on the king side. while the black pieces were on the queen side. So hopefully this was enjoyable. I found this game quite interesting and quite instructive and useful. So good luck in your own games as well.